Alright, so I figured to make some more guides here. This is Nythendra. First boss has to be done first in Emerald Nightmare. Nythendra has two phases that repeat. You'll notice that we have markers across the room. That's because we split up the room into quadrants. The reason we do that is because of this ability, Rot. Rot goes out on a portion of the raid, 3 to 4 players, and I believe 1 player extra per phase that you're in, so you can't do this fight for too long. Rot pulses damage and gives you a stack of Infested. Infested is just a dot that stays on you, just increasing damage through the rest of the fight. It also applies that damage and that dot to anyone else that you hit with it. When it falls off of you, it drops a pool on the ground, as you can see in the back of the room there. So you'll want to make sure that when you get Rot, you pull it out to the edge of the room. The tanks get their own version of this, called Volatile Rot. Same exact mechanic, but it gives a stack to the raid-wide when it drops on the ground. So they want to drop it far away, because it also does decreasing damage the further away they drop it to the raid. So it's important to keep that controlled and away from everyone else. Every 45 seconds, the boss will do a breath, and the breath chooses a random player. It does a ton of damage in that location. It's like a 50-degree cone, and drops a bunch of more puddles beneath that breath. It's important to spread out in the first place because of Rot, but you also want to spread out so that so fewer people have to move for breath. Now, there's 2 breaths in phase 1, and then she goes to phase 2. So phase 1's a minute and a half, and phase 2 is 20 seconds. The gimmick in phase 2 is that she drops to the ground and she regenerates. And it's called Heart of the Swarm. She's doing it now. When she does that, she spawns a bunch of little bugs around the room. Now, those bugs themselves do nothing, but random ones will grow, and they'll pulse for damage. It's called Burst of Corruption. If you get hit by it, it increases your damage by subsequent ones by 75%. So you only want to take, at most, 1 hit, and then you want to make sure to move away. They can also spawn underneath her wing. It can be hard to see from melee. And while she's doing this, she's pulling infested stacks off of the raid. As well as pulling all the puddles from outside the room inward. So that's why we have puddles in 2 quadrants, and then when we go into the phase 2, we go to the quadrants that are clean. After that, it's basically just a rinse and repeat, taking Rots out to the edge of the room, making sure to drop them in good places. Behind her tail is a good place. She does have a tail lash, but it's pretty infrequent. It's safe to drop back there. I think she only does it if you remain back there after having Rot. Rot is more important on Mythic than on Heroic. I believe on Normal you don't even get infestation stacks, but on Mythic difficulty you get mind controlled at 10 stacks of infestation that they drop off of you. Nythendra also doesn't pull those stacks off of you during her phase 2, so you want to manage those stacks throughout the whole fight. Getting mind controlled is an inevitability. You don't have a lot of health when it happens to you, but what you will do is you'll try and cast Spread Corruption. And Spread Corruption, if you successfully cast it, gives a stack of infestation to the entire raid. Obviously, that's terrible. If 2 people are MC'd and they're spam casting that, the whole raid will get MC'd and it's a pretty quick wipe. And you're already getting stacks from the tanks dropping off their debuff, as well as and that gives a stack to the whole raid, as well as with Rot. And with Rot, you have a minimum of 4 stacks. I believe you get 3 on your way to dropping it out, then your 4th when the puddle spawns beneath you, and then you have to move out of it. That's if you're moving very quick. You might get 5, but you should never get 6. Managing the MCs is the most important thing. Killing this in probably 3 or 4 phases on Mythic, it's going to be a decent DPS check, but it is the first boss, so it's probably not going to be too difficult. And just making sure that you're not taking any extra stacks, as well as the bugs. The bugs, I believe, also will give you a stack of infestation. So mind controls will be happening during phase 2, during phase 1, and you'll try and make sure that if you're going to get mind controlled, if you know that, say, you have 9 stacks, get yourself into melee so that your mind control happens. We can just cleave you down, kick you really easily, stun you, and get you out of that mind control ASAP. The tanks can also be mind controlled. Tanks, keep in mind that if you're about to be mind controlled, don't pop a personal. If you're a druid, for instance, and you're not tanking and you know you're about to be mind controlled, pop out of bear form. Otherwise, just stay spread out. Make sure that you're not taking extra damage from the breath, any extra stacks from Rot. You'll notice this is pretty sloppy on Normal. This is one of our earlier kills that were fairly stacked, so when Rot goes out, it pulses immediately, and that pulse is hitting more than 1 person. If it's hitting more than 1 person, that's bad. It should hit you and pretty much you alone. As you take it out to the back, people should move out of the way, and you should try and find a good path so that you don't pass any other stacks. And that is Nythendra. Should be a quick one. Next up, Il'gynoth. Il'gynoth is also a two-phase fight with rotating phases. On normal and heroic, we can maybe do this in one set of phases, but on mythic, this will probably be a 3 set of phase fights. The boss is basically only accessible once you kill that eye in the middle there. Now that eye takes reduced damage, 99% reduced damage from players, and you can only kill it by dragging bloods onto it. And the bloods, when they explode, when they die, they explode, dealing damage to that eye, as well as anyone else who gets hit by it. Bloods are spawned by killing these eyes around the room, and these eyes have their own mechanics. They'll spawn throughout the whole fight in random, well, not random locations, in set locations around the room, and we'll have to manage those in a specific kill priority order. These bloods that do spawn, you pull them to the eye. They are fully CCable, slowable, grippable, stunnable, anything like that. So if one's out, make sure that you grip it in and blow it up. There's a set number of eyes that drop per tentacle, and so if we do this correctly, then we should have the exact number of bloods to push in the next phase. However, if one blood misses, then we might have a weird number and extend phase 1 by like 30 or 40 seconds. It's kind of awkward as hell. But in order of priority, killing these tentacles, it's a Dominator Tentacle, which is the tank tentacle. We have 2 at the beginning. That does a frontal little slam that you want to face away from people. It also does a raid-wide damage slam and does a tank just hit that does increasing damage, so they want to be killed fairly quickly. That won't be at the same time as a Corruptor Tentacle, but Corruptor Tentacles are the second priority, so it's effectively also first priority. And Corruptor Tentacles deal damage to the raid, as well as leave a debuff on players that causes them to drop pools of corruption beneath their feet. The pools of corruption will do a ton of damage, like 1 million a second, as well as silence and pacify you. So you want to drop those out on the edges of the room, away from players, get them away from the middle of the room. After that is Deathkiller Tentacles. They just have a kickable Mind Flay that they do to random players, and I believe it's about 1 million a tick every 2 seconds. So it's a lot of damage, but they are pretty easily managed. Ranged, even if you're not on them, you should be kicking them. The last thing is this new tank ad here. And this is probably the lowest priority. It does increasing damage to the tank as well as a laser on the tank, which makes them take more damage from the next laser, and they also drop bloods when they die. Tanks will have to swap mechanics on that, as well as tank it next to the eye. Not super important. It's nice to cleave the bloods with it, but the big thing is that it spawns corruption beneath its feet, so we want to make sure that wherever we're tanking it, we're not putting corruption in bad places. Other than that, that's the gist of phase 1. All that's happening is when these tentacles come up, we just make sure that we're killing them in the right order. They spawn all across the room, and they're in set positions, so every attempt should be the same. And once we get all these bloods in here, you'll have to make sure to stun them and kill them and get away from them. The other things that the bloods do is when they attack their fixated target, and they are fixate, so we can't tank the bloods. They will choose random players to fixate. When they attack them, they leave a dot on their target, which causes increasing damage to that. It's I believe it's like 200k a stack on Mythic, but not a huge deal. Something you can mostly ignore. Just do what you can to minimize that, but it's dispellable. So if you are bringing it in because your blood's at like 10% health, and you have to take a couple stacks, like absolutely no sweat, we can dispel that off of you and we'll be fine. And here we just have one more tentacle to kill, and then we'll push into the next phase. Now, if there are any bloods up when we push into the next phase, they need to die before we go inside of this little hollow. So behind the eye is where the actual heart of Il'gynoth is. Because if any bloods enter that room, they'll explode and do massive raid-wide damage. So we just need to make sure that they both die as we're pushing, and we get out of there. Now, we can just kill those as fast as we want on Heroic. On Mythic, that won't be the case. Alright, so in Phase 2, it's Heart. This is where we want to save our cooldowns, burn, lust, everything. On Heroic, we only barely, where on normal, when we were scaled down, we only barely don't kill this in one go, but we did during other tests. So, on Mythic, this, again, we'll probably have to go in here 2 or 3 times. Now, the only mechanic on Heroic is that she puts little bombs on a bunch of people in the raid, and that detonates after about 6 or 8 seconds. Spread out, make sure that you only take one of the detonations, pretty straightforward. In Mythic, however, there'll also be little puddles around the room, bloods of corruption that the heart spawns that you want to make sure that you're not standing in. I'm sure it'll block off portions of the room that we'll need to do a better job spreading otherwise. As well as on Mythic, there'll be spawns outside the room. We'll continue to get mind-flaying tentacles that we need to have a team outside to kill. After 50 seconds, the boss finishes Dark Reconstruction, and anyone remaining in the room is instantly killed and won't be battle resable. So you'll want to make sure that you're out of there in time, that you push out whatever damage you can, but make sure that you don't die. And then Phase 1 restarts. Now, Phase 1 has the majority of the Mythic mechanics. Nothing super complex. The main thing is managing where we have our puddles of corruption, because the boss will spawn these death blossoms around the room, and the death blossoms will spawn in roughly a circle pattern, and their mechanic is that they will explode after X number of seconds, I believe 6 or 8. When they explode, if someone is standing in them, then they do nothing to the raid. However, if no one is standing in them, it's a fairly punishing mechanic. It puts a dot on the entire raid that ticks for about 200k. That in itself isn't bad, but the dot lasts 50 seconds, and it stacks. So if we have 2 or 3 of those go off, and maybe 1 each time, then suddenly our healers are really having a lot to heal on the entire raid, and it's going to be a lot to keep up with. In addition to that, on Mythic, when the Bloods die, they also leave a dot on the raid that lasts 4 seconds, but is a little more hefty. So we can't kill all the Bloods at the same time on Mythic. That dot can probably kill 3, maybe 4 at a time, and we'll probably assign 1 or 2 DPS, maybe the Warlocks, to handle those Bloods and make sure that they're dying at the correct time. They're still fully CCable, so pulling them in onto the eye and then stunning them or trapping them, putting down slow fields, things like that, extremely effective. Make sure that you're not eating extra stacks, because suddenly you have a dot from a missed Death Blossom, a dot from a dead Blood, and a dot from the melee on the Blood, as well as a Mind Flay taking on you, and maybe you have Spew Corruption on you as well, and that will fuck you up fast. The DPS check on this, I assume we'll probably be killing the boss in the minimum number of phases, probably 2, maybe 3 depending, and then otherwise just reducing the amount of damage you're taking. The faster any of the tentacles die, obviously, the less damage that everyone has to take. Otherwise, that's pretty much the whole fight. Kill priorities, again, are the Tank Tentacle and the Corruptor Tentacle as priority number 1. The Corruptor Tentacle making you drop puddles beneath your feet, as well as doing a bunch of damage to you. Drop those on the edge of the room. We're not doing a stellar job here. This is one of our earlier testings. We never really got that down, and then otherwise bring the eyes, or bring the Bloods next to the eye, make sure that none of the Bloods miss, and the boss will push into the next phase fairly quickly. Alright, so next up is Renferal. Renferal has 2 different forms, Spider and Bird, and 3 different platforms that she will go to periodically throughout the fight. Now, on normal heroic, we kill this on platform 2 pretty quickly, but on Mythic, we will definitely be seeing platform 3 and maybe even a full rotation back to platform 1. Now, she starts in spider form all the time. She has a couple mechanics here. The first is Necrotic Venom. Necrotic Venom puts a debuff on you that, after a couple seconds, starts to drop a bunch of poison beneath your feet. So you have time to move out of the raid, and you want to move behind the raid, ideally. The next ability is Vile Ambush, which is what you just saw, where she ascends to the web and chooses a random player's location to drop down and do a ton of damage. Now, that's less damage the further you are away. The minimum distance you need to be is that red circle on the ground, but the further away is better. When she does that, she drops a bunch of spiderlings from the web as well, and spiderlings, they leave a dot on the tank, which can't be dispelled, so they need to be killed fairly quickly. But in addition to that, they also, if they're within a couple yards of the boss, or 10 yards of the boss does increased damage per one of them, like 25% per single spider. So the tanks will get one shot pretty quick if you tank those together. What we are kind of doing is, as you can see here, a Vile Ambush happens. We try to spawn it near the mark. We bring all the spiderlings onto one tank. We pull the boss near the raid as we kill the spiderlings, and then once the spiderlings are dead, we kind of swap her back to the edge of the platform. Now, Necrotic Venom, if that hits anyone in the raid, it passes a stack like Necrotic Venom to them as well. So you cannot hit the raid with that. Otherwise, the entire raid will just suddenly have Necrotic Venom, and it'll just be an automatic wipe. Then she switches to her rock form, or her bird form, and she has a couple mechanics here. The big thing is Dark Winds. She puts that little purple swirly on those people, and after 10 seconds, they spawn tornadoes. While you have that debuff, though, you can run through poison and clear the poison off the ground. The other thing she has is a pushback like Chikun in Throne of Thunder. She pushes you and does damage to the whole raid. When she's done with that, she drops feathers on the ground, which only healers and tanks should pick up. DPS should really not pick those up. It allows you to jump and fly like 50 yards in the air, and it gives you a special action button to slam to the ground and instantly kill any spiderlings that it hits. So as we're moving from one platform to the next, there's webs on the ground, and there's eggs on those webs, and there is tornadoes on the webs, and you want to make sure that you're avoiding all those things if possible. Spiderlings will naturally spawn anyways, even if you don't hit a single egg. There are spiderlings that are spawning from the web and coming up and attacking you. Tanks will want to pick those up. Tanks and healers will want to smash those with their special action button. And then anything that's remaining will want to be brought to the platform and killed. When those die, they drop puddles beneath them. And once again, if you get dark winds, you should run through those puddles, clear them, and then spawn your tornadoes in a good location. The other thing that the bird will do is it will choose a random location and cleave. You'll just want to make sure to move away. I believe that on normal and heroic, this only faces the tank. On mythic, unless they changed it, it can face anyone. And then obviously there's the pushback on the next platform. You want to make sure that you're avoiding any tornadoes once again, and getting pushed back into a good location and running against it as much as you can. On platform 1, we found an area where we can kind of choose that. You see we get into like a little corner, and we don't have to move. We can just stand still, DPS, and heal pretty easily. Platform 2 and 3, that might not be so easy. There's also little egg sacs around the room that will spawn spiderlings if you run into them, so you have to be extra careful about that. Now, on Mythic, each platform she has an additional ability. She spawns eggs around her on one platform that will hatch, and you need to get the spiderlings away. She'll automatically hatch them during her vile ambush. On another platform, she will do tangled webs, which covers the entire platform in webs. Well, mostly the entire platform, about 80% of it, so we'll have to move completely across instead of just getting away from the vile ambush. And the last thing she'll do is she will do violent winds, which push her target away and does damage to them, reduced by how many people are getting pushed away by that. So we want to make sure that we have more than just the tank doing that. I believe we'll have 2 groups, because it leaves a debuff on you called Windburn, making you take 12% more damage per stack of that, so we'll have to alternate that. And that's it for the first 3 bosses. I will do more guides for the rest.